Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Haven of Horror, the much delayed and highly anticipated, at least for me,
Yeah.
episode on Friday the 13th, the 1980 original, which in many ways helped kickstart an entire genre, this and
Mhm.
Halloween. And my buddy Doolittle here has never seen this movie, so while this is also is going to be a review like our typical reviews, this is also going to be me asking him some questions that I think would be interesting to have on recording.
Yeah.
Before we do that, as always, if you're interested in our content, please hit that subscribe button. And we do have a Patreon now. Feel free to check that out so we can put more money into our production. What little there is, but so Doolittle,
Yeah.
this is your first time watching it. How much did you know about this movie going into it?
I knew that Jason's mom was the killer. And I knew that Kevin Bacon was in the movie. I'm trying to think about others. Oh, I know about the Lou Reed story, where they were filming and Lou Reed had like a farm. Um, and they like were like, "Oh my God, hey, it's Lou Reed," and they're like talking about stuff with him, and I think he played a song for them. And then I think that's like the extent of it is I know that fun little story, and I know those 2 little kind of factoids about the film. I also know about the ending, with, the Jason kid popping out of the water, but I forgot that it was a dream, which is unfortunate. But that is still a really cool scene nonetheless, even if it's a dream.
So, since you brought that up, let's start there
Okay.
because there's obviously a very big continuity issue with this franchise. If you give a shit about continuity with this franchise, which I
Okay.
personally don't, but so Jason is dead in this movie, but then she sees Jason, and then he's alive in the next movie and an adult, even though it's only been like 5 years. Do you think it was actually a dream or the cops were just stupid?
I mean, I think in this movie it was a dream.
Okay.
Um, but I also think that because the way that they leave it off is that she's like, "Oh, he's still out there," or something like that. So it's possible that it was not a dream, but maybe almost like a kind of a way for her mentally to kind of channel that situation. I don't know. It was a very weird ending, but it is what it is though, and I think that the way it ends is still fine. You know. But that scene though, oh my god, probably one of the best jump scares in like any slasher movie. Like I cannot believe that happened, you know?
That is my personal pick for best jump scare in like a horror film.
It's really good.
Um and I agree with you. I guess my question would be more than so do you think it's a dream in this movie and then they recontextualize it as an excuse to bring Jason back and make sequels?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, I think that without having seen the sequels, I think that that's entirely possible. That they could go back to this and be like, well, actually, it's a retcon. This actually did happen. You know.
Mhm.
And I think that'd be fun, you know? I'm not sure if that's actually what happened, but, that would make sense, to
It
have
doesn't
that.
make sense either way. I was just a curious. It was just a question.
Well, it would make
They
sense for, like, this series, though, is what I'm
yeah.
saying. Yeah. I think traditionally, there's no way that makes sense, but for what this series is trying to accomplish, it's like, whatever, you know?
Yeah. So I Rich Evans from a channel that I think mostly I watch. You haven't seen a lot of them, but Red Letter Media. He used these words to describe another movie, but I'm going to steal them for this. This is an
Okay.
excellent short film that is bogged down by about 60 minutes of filler.
Mm,
I think the
mm.
last 20 minutes of this movie are incredible, and if it was just that 20 minutes, this would be a perfect film. Now, I love all the kills, but most of this movie, and I wonder if you agree with me, is just kind of like a boring hangout movie.
It is. I almost wonder if Tarantino was looking at this for like Death Proof or something like that. Because that movie is also very much like a hangout movie, and then there's like horror elements eventually. You know what I mean? I actually think that that could be, like, a really fun movie, you know? Like a hangout movie that happens to have, like, these kinds of, like, inherently flawed situation in the background. I just thought I just couldn't really grab onto these characters. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest issue with that approach. And obviously these movies aren't concerned about that, which is fine, but given that there was a whole lot of space without a whole lot going on, that does present itself as kind of an issue that I think that the other sequels resolve, which is good, and address. Um, but
Don't you just
you
love
also
that scene of them making like popcorn? Or was it hot chocolate?
yeah, I don't know why that's there, but whatever. But hey, for what it's worth, Kevin Bacon's fun. But I always like Kevin Bacon because he's the man. He's awesome. And he's pretty fun in this movie, and he has the best kill as well.
I
Like when
was
he
just
gets the
about to
thing.
say he has
Yeah,
the best kill.
yeah, it's awesome. It's
So,
such a marvel of special effects for what they had and the resources they had too. It's crazy.
well, and that kill is fun because I've got the Scream Factory book set of this, and I've
Uh
seen
huh.
that there's a documentary that's like 4.5 hours. It's well worth it if you're curious. But he talks about this movie, and for that kill, they were supposed to have this like tube that would blow blood up through the prosthetic they made, but
Oh
it
my
broke.
god.
But it, like the tubing broke or something. So the reason that that blood splurts the way it does is there's a dude under the bed like blowing into the tube to get the blood to come
Oh my god.
out. The making of
That's
this movie is insane. Um,
wow.
but to go to the genesis of this movie, since we're talking about the making of it, this movie
Yeah.
exists as much as I love it. This movie exists solely to capitalize on the success of Halloween.
Yeah.
Sean Cunningham has said as much. Victor, I forget the writer's name, Victor something, has said that he even went to see Halloween like 3 times in theaters and would take notes of like what they would do and like how can we fit it to the script that we're doing. And there's certain scenes that you can see they just took from Halloween, especially the final with the final chase, because when the girl's finding the bodies and the one that swings down from the doorway that's shot for shot from Halloween.
Yeah.
Um, and and other and certain other scenes. But I think what makes this movie stand out and what this movie really relied on was those special effects because they were really lucky to get Tom Savini. And I don't think this movie would have worked. Victor Miller is his name. This is the writer. I don't think this movie would have even been remembered, let alone launched a franchise that is arguably, I think, the biggest slasher franchise in history. I could be wrong on that, especially because we've had new entries in franchises like Halloween and Child's Play.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm not sure where it stands now. But Tom Savini really helped launch this franchise. Do you think this movie would have been the same success without those effects?
Oh, I totally agree with you. Like, no challenging you there. I think that Savini's presence is really felt, and I think that those effects do kind of elevate the kind of the heightened nature of what the series would like eventually kind of become. And I also will say that Betsy Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees is also amazing, and I think that is also pretty fondly remembered.
Oh,
I want to
absolutely.
say I think that her and Savini are kind of like the best parts in the movie, in my opinion, because the part at the end where she's like talking as Jason is like really really unsettling, and it's really really disturbing.
I agree with you. However, I do want to give credit to one more person, and that person is Harry Manfredini, because
Okay.
this movie uses music almost as well as Halloween.
Oh, yeah. No. You're totally right. Um, I think that the sound cues of the movie are really cool and immediately iconic. Like,
Mhm.
I think that I'm assuming that that's also just a constant throughout the series is
Yeah,
just that like echo or whatever it's called.
So
you know.
what that is, because a lot of people, and I'm just gonna say this for mostly for the audience benefit as well as I don't. It sounds like you don't really know. Um, that sound is it's either Betsy Palmer or it's Harry Manfredini who is the composer on this film and most of these films is the killer mommy kill her from the end of the movie, but like altered and messed with in production. So it's key ma ma ma. That's what you're hearing through the film.
Oh, that makes it even more eerie.
Yeah. I would say that the only theme in slasher specifically that's more iconic than that would be the Halloween theme.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, Henry Manfredini has credits on I think every sequel because that
Oh,
is kind of the just the Jason sound.
yeah. It's the sound cue that kind of initiates the presence of the killer, you know. No, that's so cool. I didn't know that that's what that was, and thank you for that. That sounds great.
Not a problem. And then on top of that sound as well, I really like they've got this kind of screeching violin sound that they play when the killer's on screen or quote on
Hmm.
screen that I think is also very effective. And it's interesting to think because I think by today's standards, this is peak. Like this movie isn't really scary; it's just kind of boring. But I can see in 1980 because this is very much a grindhouse film. Our mutual
Yeah.
friend who's been on the channel before once told me that Friday the 13th is like a grindhouse movie brought to the mainstream because big studios like Paramount who distributed this movie didn't really distribute movies like this. But with Halloween, of course, they're looking for their own answer, so you get this, kind of sleazy, $555,000 budget movie, and you're introducing kind of a new culture to moviegoers in 1980,
Yeah. No,
2 years
I
after
definitely
Halloween.
see that. Yeah, and it has like different values from Halloween for sure. And you can tell that they're kind of looking at Halloween, but it does kind of immediately make itself distinct from Halloween. I think just like kind of tonally, um, and all that stuff. I have a question. Because something that I thought was kind of interesting was there's like a pre-title sequence, kill, almost like a James Bond movie. Um, Does that continue throughout, the series? That there's, like, a pre-title sequence, where, like, you see Jason or, like, like, killing someone in the beginning, and then there goes
Most
the
of
title?
them do. I'm not too sure about the later movies, but I know that's a thing for most of. In
Okay.
fact, it's interesting that you described that as like a James Bondian thing, because I guess we're just going to talk about certain parts of the whole franchise, including some movies that we're not going to get around to doing yet.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th Part 6 straight up has the James Bond bullet shot.
And what, is it so that, Jason's gonna, like, cut you with the machete and
So
then,
he turns to
uh
look at the camera like James Bond
mhm.
does, and then cuts at the camera like instead of shooting, and then blood fills the screen.
That
It's
doesn't even
amazing.
make sense, but that's awesome.
Well, and
Because how far away is he?
six is much more comedic. No, so not only that, but they do the black circle like enclosing on him. It is shot for shot the James Bond gun barrel,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
it's
I love that film.
amazing because that's the movie where the franchise stops taking itself seriously. He's a zombie now. We're injecting a little bit of humor. It's great. Uh, yeah, I can't wait to show you that one at some point. But anyway, back to the original. I also really like the opening, especially because it takes place in the 50s, which is kind of
Oh,
unusual
cool.
for these slasher movies that usually take place in what was present day when this movie comes out or when the movie came out.
Mhm.
My only issue with the kit with this movie on story level, yeah, it's a little boring, but at the end of the day, this is a who done it with no possible way to guess who done it.
Yeah.
because the killer's not
No.
in it until the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, there's, like, no way to know what's exactly going on. It's very strange in that way.
Yeah. But what is
I do
fun.
like
Oh, go ahead.
oh, what were you gonna say?
No, go ahead. I want to hear your thought.
Oh, okay, okay. I was just gonna say, talking about, is it Pamela,
Pamela
Voorhees?
Voorhees.
Yeah, okay. Um, Something kinda cool about her kinda character and the way that she's constructed is she kind of is, like, the kind of perversion of, like, the archetypical kinda, like, mother figure, where she's very nurturing, but it's just taken so far to, like, the furthest kind of extreme, and it's, like, a very scary kind of, like, figure and concept, the way that she kinda performs it and the way she's written. And I think that that's kind of interesting on that level, and kind of going forward and having that expand to Jason being the killer is interesting because now you have the vulnerable son as the killer moving forward, and he just becomes like a whole kind of metaphorical expression for victimhood and being victimized and acting in vengeance from that place, and how monstrous, that like he is a living metaphor, which I think is interesting. And she isn't. She has much more characterization, which is interesting. Um, but I just couldn't help but think that while watching the movie when I got to that part.
Oh, I definitely agree. And it's also like this it's the psycho thing but backwards.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And it's funny because Pamela Voorhees lives and dies on Betsy Palmer's performance, but she didn't even want to do this movie. She just needed money for either a car or gas or something.
Oh my
And
god, really?
she talks about rest in peace, Betsy Palmer. You were a wonderful actress from what I've seen you in, mostly this. But she
Mhm.
talks about like she thought this movie was like nonsense and dirty, but she needed the money.
Wow.
But it's also one of those things where after it became popular, she kind of embraced it, which was fun. Um, but yeah, a lot of the actors that played the killers in these movies, even the Jasons, you didn't see a lot of them really embrace the horror community that they were building until Kane Hodder,
Mhm.
which is why he became so popular.
Yeah, makes sense.
So this is, and then we've got the final girl, Alice, played by Adrienne King. How did you feel about the final girl in this movie?
Yeah, I thought she was all right. I didn't really have any like strong opinions either way.
She
I thought
has
that she was
no
pretty good.
backstory.
Well, there's that too. It's like I assume that in the other movies there'll be more to latch on to with the final girls. You've kind of explained that before. Um, but with this one, I was just kind of like, yeah, like she gets the job done for that archetype or that trope rather, you know.
Yeah. I adore the final girl in two, so I'm curious to see how you think about that one. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, a lot of this movie is just kids goofing off at camp. We're kind of setting up
Yeah.
what would become kind of the stereotypes of the franchise. The one kid is a crazy person who dresses up like an Indian and almost shoots somebody with an arrow, which makes me laugh
Yeah.
every time because it's fucking nuts.
Mhm.
It's like,
Yeah,
what are
that's
you doing?
crazy.
This also begins the long running tradition of every time these people come to camp, there's no kids. Did you notice the lack of kids?
I did notice. I wasn't sure why. I wasn't sure why there were no kids. Is that just that is a common thing, isn't it? That they
No
aren't.
kids show up to the camp in these movies until part six.
And isn't that kid like disturbed or something like that?
It's a bunch of
Um,
kids. Like, that's the only time camp is actually in session in any of these movies.
oh, but these are just like the camp counselors just goofing off, basically.
So the idea is supposed to be in this one. They're getting ready to open the camp. It has been shut
Yeah,
down since the killings that we saw at the beginning of the film.
but they're
Um,
preparing for it to be
yeah,
open
so
again.
camp hasn't actually opened yet, and that's when the people start killing, being killed off. Another cool thing I wanted to mention as well that I know about the kills. Well, two things. First is the big axe kill. Do you remember when the woman gets the axe in the face?
Yeah.
So it is insane how they did that because the trick is to make it look real by having the axe hit the lamp. So what they do is until the axe hits the lamp, it's a real axe, and then when they bring it back
Whoa,
down, it's a fake axe.
Jesus.
Tom Savini was nuts.
That is like impossible. I don't know how they I don't know how they did that. That's crazy.
So it's
That's
interesting
cool
because
though.
this movie got away with a lot of stuff the big studio movies wouldn't do because it's not a big studio movie.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
other big thing that I know about this movie that you couldn't get away with in any other movie is when they kill that snake,
Oh my god, that's real?
that is real.
Oh, jeez. That's
Yeah.
rough. You can't do that.
You can't do that.
Yeah, you were I can't believe that happened. Ugh, that's rough.
I I'm against it because you're just killing a poor snake, but on
Yeah.
a level of just like removing the morality from it. I am
Mhm.
impressed that they went through with it and were allowed to put that in the movie.
I can't believe they did that. Like, I mean, because I mean, that like, morally, I disagree with that, but also, like, oh my god, I cannot believe you did that. Like, Jesus Christ. They really just killed the snake.
Yep.
That's
So
wild. Different time.
different time. The other big thing with this movie that I love, and I'm curious to your thoughts on, is Crazy Ralph.
Uh-huh.
Because I love Crazy Ralph. I think he's hilarious.
Crazy Ralph is
He's
a
the
fascinating person.
yeah. I want to know how he got into that pantry.
He, does he come back in, like, the other movies, this guy?
He comes back in the next one.
Okay, okay. I guess, part 2 is, like, trying to maintain continuity more with this then, if he comes back.
So there is a continuity that can be tracked through the first six, even if they don't always line up,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
more or less. Um, well, and because like the first, so two, three, and four are take place all like the day after each other, or somewhere
Mhm.
around then. Five is where we get to the big like we're skipping ahead, but we're still keeping up with what happened in four, even if it doesn't line up. Because as much as I love these movies, they didn't get the most brilliant writers.
Right, right. That makes sense. I do think it's interesting that he's ignored, because of his alcoholism. I think that's interesting.
You're all doomed. And
Yeah.
is it this one? He has like the teeth that he like shakes at them.
Yeah, I think so. I think I remember that. Um, yeah. No, he's nuts, but
He is.
he's a great character.
I like to
He has a
imagine
great
that's
design too.
yeah. I like to
Yeah.
imagine that's not even an actor. That's just somebody they found living in the woods where they were filming. And
They
they're
were
just
like, "Oh
like,
my
can
god,
you
this guy's
say
perfect."
can you say this line like over and over and hide in this pantry?
Yeah. No, that's a wonderful, situation just to discover.
So the last thing I want to say, and I want to see if you noticed, is the decapitation scene, the iconic decapitation scene. Did you
Yeah.
notice that Pamela Voorhees' hands change after she's decapitated?
Oh, no, I did not notice that. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that. But what does it change to?
They're Tom Savini's hands.
Oh my
So they
god.
changed from Betsy Palmer's like small hands to Tom Savini's big hairy hands.
Oh,
And
that's amazing.
now that somebody's pointed it out to me, I see it every time I watch the movie.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's awesome.
That's another
I'm ex
effect that he talks about in one. It's I think it's in the big 4 hour doc, but they made like just a prosthetic of her head and then like attached it with toothpicks, so that when the actress would swing with the machete, she's basically just knocking toothpicks down.
Oh my god. That's insane. That's pretty
Yeah.
crazy though.
But yeah, if you go back and just pause it, you'll see. And he didn't even take his ring off or anything. It's just Tom Savini hands. It's really funny.
Yeah. They had to do what they had to do. That's crazy though.
Well, Doolittle, we are running low on time, so I want to
Yeah.
ask you: is there anything else that you wanted to bring to attention with this film?
Um, no, not really. It's a pretty like simple movie. I feel like we'll probably it's good that we kind of got a lot of the foundational stuff um and talked about that stuff with this movie. Because I think that it's a very important movie. In the sense that like this kind of does like serve as an important kind of film in defining the slasher genre.
Mhm.
Um, I think like Halloween, this, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, um, all kind of very important movies in that regard. Um, yeah, that's all I really have to say. It was definitely like a fun time to watch it in between breaks from midterm stuff.
Mhm.
Because midterms are a stressful time in a college student's life, so it's fun to escape into other kind of sources of entertainment. And this is a fun movie to just watch with friends. I feel like at some point I'll watch this movie and maybe the other ones with friends.
Mhm.
For sure.
Absolutely. So yeah, I agree with you. This is, I think, in the trio of the slasher Godfathers, Texas Chainsaw, Halloween, and this. Um, I have a hard time calling this a great movie. It's not even my favorite in the franchise, but I also don't think it's just an average movie. I think it is slightly above that, especially given the last 20 minutes. I would say are pure perfection. Even if I had one complaint, it's the same thing that Halloween falls trap to is they take the chase too far because she like drops her weapon like 6 times and just stops, just like
Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis does in Halloween.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
kind of like a give me. So overall, I'm gonna give this a 3. It is above average, but it has also got the first like hour is just a slog to get through, depending on your mood.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Um, I think I'll give it a 3 as well because I think that this is a like a pretty important movie to see, and there is some fun to be had, but it does kind of drag in places. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I do agree. I do think it is slightly above average, given the ending. Like it's pretty well constructed towards the end.
Yeah. Well, Doolittle, this was a lot of fun. I'm excited to show you the first 4 and then the remake of
Yeah,
this, and it'll be a good
sorry it
chance
took
for me
so
to.
long.
Oh, no worries. Like I said, school comes first. We record when
Yeah,
we can. But we will see you guys on the next episode covering Friday the 13th, part 2. A movie I have not
yeah,
went back to in a while, so that will be an interesting watch. And Doolittle, I will see you next time.
yeah. Take care. Have a great time.